The fly stitch is a decorative stitch that can be altered to give you different looks. In this video, we'll go through 3 different variations. First, we will create a basic detached fly stitch. To start, bring your needle and thread up through the fabric and stitch across to the adjacent side. Do not pull your thread all the way through. You want to keep your stitch loose. Next, bring your needle and thread through the middle point with your loose stitch below your needle and pull the stitch taut. To finish, create a small stitch or anchor stitch over the top of your thread to hold the fly stitch in place, creating a V-like shape. Let's try that again. Up through the fabric, stitch across, leaving your stitch loose. Come up through the middle and pull the stitch taut. Finish with an anchor stitch to hold your fly stitch in place. In the second example, we are going to create a series of connected fly stitches by simply altering the length of the anchor stitch. Begin by bringing your needle and thread up through the fabric and stitch across to the adjacent side. Again, do not pull your thread all the way through. Keep your stitch loose. Next, bring your needle and thread through the middle point and pull the stitch taut. To finish, create a long stitch or anchor stitch over the top of your thread and down to the next middle point to hold the fly stitch in place. Again, come up through the fabric, stitch across to the adjacent side, come up through the middle point, which is now also the end of your previous anchor stitch, and pull your thread taut. Finish with a long anchor stitch over the top of your thread and down to the next middle point. In the third example, we are going to stack each fly stitch on top of one another to fill in this leaf motif. To begin, bring your needle and thread up through the fabric and stitch across to the adjacent side, keeping your stitch loose. Next, bring your needle and thread through the middle point with your loose stitch below your needle and pull the stitch taut. For this first one, I'm going to create a long anchor stitch to mimic the stem of the leaf. To continue, bring your needle and thread up as close to the previous stitch as possible, stitch across to the adjacent side, keeping your stitch loose. Bring your needle and thread up through the middle point just slightly above the previous stitch and pull your thread taut. Finish with an anchor stitch that lies over the thread and finishes at the top of your previous anchor stitch. Again, up through the fabric, stitch to the adjacent side, keeping the stitch loose. Up through the middle, pull taut, and finish with an anchor stitch. Continue this pattern until you have filled your motif, using smaller V's as you make your way to the top. And I'm going to finish with a simple straight stitch to give the top of the leaf a nice point. And that's 3 variations on the fly stitch. To finish, you can either tie a knot in the back of your fabric or weave your thread back and forth through the back of your stitches to secure your thread. For more stitch tutorials, please click to subscribe to my channel and visit embroideryandsage.com for fun, modern DIY embroidery kits that you can make at home. Happy stitching!